Right. So this is the follow-up. So now what I want to do is to go through the surplus. Okay, I'm going to go through the surplus. I'm actually going to widen this thing a little bit so I have somewhere right next to us. Okay, so we're going to go through the surplus here. So let's start with our producer surplus, since that was one of the concerns. So our producer surplus, uh, when we had free trade, our producer surplus was just here. It was just this little part, right? But now it goes all the way up to here because the price they're going to receive is higher. And again, they don't have to sell; they can charge as high as the world market with the tariff included. They don't have to go. They can't go above that because people, assuming these were identical products, people would not buy them, but they can go up to that point. So our producer surplus is bigger, and this upper part shows it has gone bigger. So we can say, first of all, our producer surplus has gone up. Okay, that's the first part. Now let's look at our consumer surplus. Our consumer surplus seems to have gone down. So we got their marginal benefits here. We were getting all the way down to there, but we're not doing that anymore because our price has gone up. So we're just stopping here. So this is our producer surplus from this much benefit, this much cost to the consumer. Sorry, consumer surplus, like this, and it just keeps on going all the way to the point where we stop buying, which is right here. So this is now our consumer surplus, and it is quite a bit lower than it was before. Okay, it's quite a bit lower. If you want to see, let's see if we can go up and compare. Yeah, so before it included this other triangle. Now we're just including a little top of that other triangle. Okay, before we were including the whole thing. So it's smaller. So consumer surplus has gone down. It has gone down by this, all this kind of unshaded area down there. So down in consumer surplus. And so we have this area, which I'll highlight it and then I'll take away the highlight if that works. We have this part, this area here, which was part of consumer surplus before, and now it's not. And so we got to see what happens to that part. Okay, and so that's what we're gonna do right now. Well, we now have tax revenue. So we have tax revenue, and well, we have tariff revenue, which is a form of tax, right? So we now have tariff revenue. Where is the tariff revenue here? Well, this is, I should have mentioned this a second ago, this is our new imports with the tariff. Okay, it was much bigger, but now it got smaller. It got smaller because the tariff raised the cost of the imports, which made people less willing to do them. So our imported part is this part right here, this width, and our tariff is this height. So this little box here is our tariff revenue. And that's just equal to the tariff times the quantity imported, or the tariff times this quantity demanded with the tariff minus the quantity supplied with the tariff. Okay, this part. Okay, so that little part, our tariff revenue. Finally, we still have these two little triangles that we haven't accounted for. We have this one and we have this one. Okay, and so those ones are lost. These two are lost. So these are going to be dead weight loss, and this is dead weight loss. So we can count the tariff revenue as part of the economic gain of this tariff. It doesn't go to the producers or the consumers, but it does go to the government. It could be spent on useful things like maybe education, roads, national defense. But this other two parts are lost. Okay, and so these other two parts are the deadweight loss. So we also have deadweight loss, and we have a lower economic surplus. So overall, there's a lower surplus because again, all the parts were accounted for except where we have these two deadweight loss. These two deadweight loss. We're still better off doing this than being in autarky. But the higher we raise this tariff, the closer to autarky we get. The tariff, if we raise the tariff all the way so that the world price plus the tariff is P star, then tariff revenue would be zero, and this whole thing would be deadweight loss. Okay, so this deadweight loss, this side is lost due to the consumers not getting their benefit, right? Or lost utility, you could say, lost utility, which is like enjoyment for the consumers. Okay, because they would have gladly consumed those, but they didn't because the price was raised too high. So this part right here, this part right here, from here to here, well, all the way to the border, was lost. This part was lost due to inefficient production. So inefficient production. Our domestic producers were not efficient, so they produced this and it was consumed. So it wasn't like it didn't happen. This part over here didn't happen. Okay, this part for this other deadweight loss on the other side didn't happen. This one happened. It was produced and consumed, but because the costs of production, because they're more inefficient, because the costs of production are higher for these domestic firms, no one got the benefit. They didn't get the benefit, and the consumers didn't get the benefit. No one got a benefit from that because this production was inefficient. So we lose surplus for two reasons when we do this restriction of trade. According to this basic model, you would lose because of reducing the amount consumed, so the consumers don't get this benefit of consuming, and we also lose it due to inefficient production taking place. So we're producing something that we can buy much cheaper on the world market. So it'd be like let's say watermelons. So the U.S. is producing watermelons and it's costing us like $20 a watermelon or $10 a watermelon, let's say, and we could buy it from other countries for like $5 a watermelon. So in that case, we're relatively inefficient producers of that thing. So anyways, so this is the basic idea. So the idea is that by restricting trade, we can increase the producer surplus. We can increase the production of the good, which would, quote unquote, save jobs. But it might come at a high cost. It might be expensive to do that. And the expense can be measured by looking at the deadweight loss, looking at how much do we lose due to inefficient production, how much do we lose due to the consumers having to cut back on this, or in some cases, if this is a good that's an input into other production, it might end up hurting other industries in the. For example, if this was a tariff on importing machinery that is used in some other type of production, it might end up hurting the production in that area. Okay, so those are the basic ideas. So we do get we can save jobs, but it comes at a cost. Now, we could also accomplish the same thing. I'm not going to do it, but we could accomplish the same thing instead of using a tariff, we could use a quota. And so if we use the quota, if we made the quota exactly as big as this gap here, if we made the quota this big as this gap here, like we made that the quota, so that numerical amount, then the price would rise until it got to this same price of the world plus tariff. So you can accomplish the same goal with a quota. The only difference is in the case of a quota, there's no tariff revenue. So the government would not get this tariff revenue. The deadweight loss stays the same. The deadweight loss stays the same, but the government doesn't get the tariff revenue. What ends up happening is that goes to, so this is, if you have a quota, actually I'll show it real quick and then I'll go back. So if you use a quota, instead of this being tariff revenue, this goes to the importer. So often you'll have like licensed importers. So that square, instead of being tariff revenue, it goes to importer. If they're lucky enough to get the license to import this good, then they can buy low and sell high. And they buy at the world price and they sell at this price. You can also say plus tariff, plus quota, right? They buy this much at this price, world price, and then they sell at the higher price because there's less of it, so they can raise the price, right? So when you use a quota instead of a tariff, it's basically the same except for you don't get the tax revenue. Okay, so back to the beginning situation. So that's basically it. That is basically our how to restrict trade for imports. For exports, exports are also sometimes restricted. Usually, it'll be something like an export restraint, which is essentially a numerical quota on how much can be exported. Sometimes it might even be an export ban. This is usually done if it's a very sensitive product uh, or something that the country is worried about having a shortage of. So, for example, in a country that's had a history of food shortages, they might put an export ban on the staple foods. Like they might put an export ban on like rice, corn, wheat, or something like that. They might limit exports of those products even if they don't put a ban on them. And you can also tax exports. So some countries do tax their exports. But again, well, by taxing the exports, you're going to reduce the amount of exports that take place. I won't show that in graphical form because I think we've done enough graphs for this week. But anyways, I will post this, and then I will the rest of the part will either be outside videos or some text explanations of the other arguments related to trade.